It's been, Jeremy, a decade since we spoke, and I saw the news of the
Really?
Kickstarter, which looks like a really, really important project and one way of completing that Chad and Jeremy circle. So I thought it'd be
Yes.
hopefully a great way to talk about that, shine more light about it, as well as delving into some of the things that we didn't cover a decade ago.
Great. Sure. You're right. It is a thrilling project, actually. Do you want me to talk about it? What we're up to?
Yeah, because I saw the original launch of it. The great thing is that I think you met your original target, but you now stretch targets, which aims to do something more ambitious. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I mean, just to back up a second, Chad and I, for 30 years, or more, maybe, whenever we could get together, and we lived on different continents, we had different lives, we loved working together. But we couldn't always do it. And Chad always had a studio. I mean, he just built his own studio. He's one of those guys, analog, of course, but of very high quality nonetheless. And he was also an absolutely brilliant. Chad could play just about any instrument you put in front of him. I think a flute solo here, really? And their flute solo. Amazing. And so we had recorded 30 years of material that had just been sitting there. And it's been a huge project that our manager, Jason Roden, another Jason, had very much been putting together, and Dan Coston, who's another supporter and took a lot of our photographs. And between them, they have rescued this material and found it on, I mean, at some point, I think I heard the word Betamax at some point. So, I mean, it's been all kinds of odd, completely useless formats that it was now on. And so to go right back, so we had all the tracks, we could remix, we could do absolutely everything. And I went into the studio with my old pal, Jo Meacham, who I've been working with for the past 10 years, completing my own work. He's done most of the work because a lot of it's technical. And now what I think it's going to be a double album. And because the response has been such, I think we are finally going to be able to do what I always wanted to do, and particularly which this deserves, is a vinyl release. And so that's where things are at the moment. But the stuff on it is so, I mean, there's songs that nobody's ever heard that Chad's written, really beautiful stuff. It was kind of the album we always wanted to make and never finished. And so we've been finishing it up. And if, for example, Chad occasionally would not have done a solo between this bit and the next bit, and Joe, brilliant guitarist that he is, was able, in the style of Chad, very carefully and with great respect, to put that in. So, I mean, there are moments. There's a couple of lead vocals that I was supposed to have done, I never got around to, that I've now put in. But mostly, pretty much 85%, 90% is as Chad and I did it 25 years ago, shall we say. Chad's harmonies, are completely extraordinary. And there's a lot of that. I'm just completely overexcited about this. And as you say, it is the perfect sort of ending to our story. So, yeah.
Absolutely fantastic to hear. Is this more of a case of finishing material that you're working on with Chad sporadically over the decades, or is there elements that are a bit like Beatle projects now and then, free as a bird, where you're taking something that may or may have not been?
No, it's much more finishing up. We're not grabbing something off the cutting room floor and making it acceptable now. This should have, had anybody wanted to sign us, had we been in the same room for months on end, this is the sort of thing we would have completed. It's only because of time and illness, and then Chad not being with us, and so on. It just remains, it's an unfinished project, but it's almost finished. I mean, it's hard to describe that. One of the things that who know the catalogue, shall we say, of everything that he and I have done, they will hear completely different versions of some of the songs that I've been putting out as the bottom drawer sessions. And some of them, I have to say, are rather better, which I have to admit, because Chadwick suddenly comes in and does an amazing piano arrangement. Oh my God, that is great. And with those harmonies, damn. So it's that. And also, there's a like a 7.5 minute song cycle. I wouldn't like to put it that way. It's a piece about Dr. Livingstone, for example, which I've always absolutely loved. I think it's one of his best things he ever did. Which Chad wrote, and I am Livingstone and he is Stanley. And it totally works. And it has some astonishing harmonies because Chad had been reading a book about Dr. Livingstone and his attempts to stop slavery, and he was very moved by it and wrote this extraordinary thing which nobody's ever heard, which has elements of our later work in the sort of the psychedelic stuff. But it's a fitting end, I'll tell you that. I don't want to oversell it, but I'm thrilled.
Yeah, it sounds like you're touching on styles from your back catalogue across the last 60 years. I know that you've teased us with a few versions on Facebook of songs that I think may be in scope from the bottom drawer sessions, like Clothes for Repairs and Made for Each Other.
They're on it. They're on it. Yes, come to think of it, there's a song called Bellhop, which is one of my songs, which is on the bottom drawer sessions, and Chad does this amazing. This is what I was thinking about this his piano. He does an amazing. It's a Jerry Lee Lewis version, and it totally rocks. And we are. I mean, oh, that's the other. So what we've done. Let me clarify a little bit. Is Chad because Chad worked in a time when the synthesizers had just arrived. Remember that period?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I would go into synth players or keyboard players, and they would say, they were totally excited. It's absolutely a thing of the 80s, you know. Now, I can do anything with this. And I'd say, okay, do me an acoustic guitar. And this sort of awful noise would come out. And I'd say, no, it can't. No, you can't. Okay. So Chad would, for reference mainly, put in the bass parts would be left-hand synth bass. So the first thing that Jo did, we agreed, was to make that a real bass in each case, right? So it becomes much more organic. Any click track was taken away and we got in a drummer. So it's live drums, absolutely following what Chad had been indicating on his version, and live and a proper electric bass. So those two, if you take those two things, and then you kind of watch out for the very early synth sounds, which there are a few, not many, not many, which are terribly dating. And so that it comes sort of full circle back to how we used to record. And so it sounds sort of much more classic than locked in a particular time period. The title, when all is said and done, is from a song that you haven't heard called, nobody has, called Life Rolls On, which Chad wrote. A beautiful song. It has, but the song remains when all is said and done. Hey, that does it, doesn't it? So yeah, it's a thrilling project, and we're just getting it. The recording is mainly done. We're still tweaking. I've got to go back and do another huge session and just to make sure. And we keep finding things that we think, do you know something? Why don't we put that in as well? Because we can. And so it's grown and grown. And there's some covers. Chad recorded a number of covers. I kept writing because I'd met a lyricist, and basically that kind of opened. I didn't have to worry about what to write about, which was a great freedom. In fact, I said to Chad at one point, if you can find a sort of, you'll be surprised how much it'll release you. But he didn't. So he does a number of covers and plus some original Chads, which are wonderful as a song to his daughter, which is one of the most heartbreaking things you'll ever hear. And there's quite an elegiac quality to it because Chad, I think, knew that he was getting older and more ill, And so a number of the songs are about life rolls on and when all is said and done and the end of life stuff, which is very, very moving, particularly the one with about his daughter. You know, now she's a voice on the telephone. Tremendous.
There's a bit of an echo. There's a song off the All Good Things box set that Chad wrote for your daughter, Happy Birthday, Little One, which is also
Ah,
an absolutely
yes.
beautiful track.
Yes, yes, you're so right. He stopped writing. So the thing about Chad, I looked at his work rate once and I sort of thought, well, every 5 years you wrote the best songs ever been written ever. But it isn't very, I mean, I meanwhile, particularly when I met Dave Pearce, the stuff came pouring out. But Chad he took his time. But there's a Buddy Holly cover, there's a David Bowie cover, a couple of Beatles versions, that he was fooling around with. Yeah, there's a lot to get to grips with.
There's a line in that song, Happy Birthday, Little One, which is really touching. It's something like, Your father and I laughed together and cried together.
Yes,
It's
yes,
very moving. And I think
yes.
that you first met Chad all the way back in 1960. Is that right?
September 1960, I had been at the Central School of Speech and Drama. I had intended to be an actor. This is what I'd always wanted, I thought. But I had a piano teacher at school, sort of, I'm talking 10, 11 now, that kind of school. And his teaching methods involved hitting you across the back of the head if you screwed up a note. So I found this very discouraging, and I took up the ukulele. It's nice and simple. And that, of course, to guitar. So when I arrived at the Central School of Speech and Drama, I'd already been in skiffle groups and I couldn't stop. I mean, I had a guitar around my shoulder at all times, and people knew this. And actually, I was looking for somebody to work with. And there was a guy in my year who was a Dutch guy, nice sweetheart, who played jazz clarinet, which didn't really work with folk guitar. And we had one song that worked, which was Summertime. I mean, forever, everybody can do summertime. That was our thing. That was it. And I was stuck and I wanted, and at the beginning of my second year, so 1960, September 1960, somebody comes I'm in a rehearsal room and he says, "Hey, the guy you're looking for has just arrived in the new intake. He's on the teacher training course." I said, "Really?" "Yeah, apparently he can play Apache by the Shadows the whole way through." I said, "My God, take me to this musical genius." And Chad, I mean, I was in the same room. Maybe he went and got him and brought him back up. I don't know, but it seemed very quick. And Chad walked in and he sat down at the piano and he played Bad Penny Blues, Humphrey Lyttelton hit, which was huge at the time. I mean, boogie to the max. Anyway, he played that. And then I had a guitar and he picked that up and oh my goodness. And then we started singing together. And we both had chorister backgrounds. Chad had been a professional choir boy, chorister, at Durham Cathedral Choir School. I'd been very, very involved in my school choir, sort of kind of the leader, did the solos and all that. So it was a sort of an instant brotherhood. It was just extraordinary. And so, yeah, we met then. And indeed, there were ups and downs in our lives. Children would have accidents, divorces, the usual mess that happens in life. And he and I were very much the first person we would call. "Hey, man, you're not going to believe this." Oh my God, really? Oh, damn. So there you are. And actually, on the Dr. Livingston, there's a moment, big, heavy drums. I can't think what kind of drums they are. They're played actually by my godson, Patrick, who is James Patrick Stuart, who is Chad's eldest son. So round and round we go. We were always very close friends. We would have ups and downs, of course, and disagreements, but on the whole, absolutely not. I mean, it's not a story of, Simon and Garfunkel, shall we say. And a duo is a very hard thing. People have written about this. because you've got nowhere else to go. You have no other band member to have a moan with. It's just the two of you.
You formed a duo with Chad, and then you got a residency. Was it Tina's Bar? Tina's Bar?
Tina's Bar was a bar in a basement in central London. It was through Chad's wife's father. In some way, he had a friend who was a backer of Tina's Bar. And you guys, oh, you should go and play that. And so it was we got in because somebody knew somebody. But it started to go very well because sort of friends would come down and they'd tell other friends, and it became quite an event. And that was the word spread. And John Barry, who was the film music composer, wonderful, sweet man, was forming a record company. And he was looking for acts to sign. And somebody said to him, you might want to check these guys out. And he came down and saw what he saw and said, yes, please, I'll have some of that. And what was because Chad was a highly trained musician, he could also write scores. And actually, we've just come across, Jason's just told me, he's just found the original score. I mean, with all the cello parts and all that, I mean, the full orchestral score written out by Chad for Yesterday's Gone, which is fantastic. So, I mean, again, if we get to do a big vinyl box set sort of thing. I mean, that's the sort of thing that now can suddenly see the light of day. And what was so generous about John, who was a giant of the industry, was that he took a look at Chad's score and said, yeah, pretty good. Yeah, sure, we'll do that then. Which he needn't have done. He could have gone, well, I think but he didn't. And so he admired John. The trouble was that John, halfway through the sessions, had a huge row with the guy he was in business with, a guy called Jeffrey Kruger, a man with a reputation, shall we say. Let's leave it at that. And he left. So we were stuck. If we'd had something called a key man clause in our contract, I mean, the contracts were just, we'll give you tuppence for every 100,000 records, I mean, it was just ridiculous. But we had no power. And then we were on the label, and they brought in Shel Talmy, who was very hot at the time with the Who and everything. And Shel finished up the sessions. A nice guy and everything, but he wasn't John.
There is a story about John. From what you're saying, it sounds like if he felt that your suggestion was right, he'd go with that. But he'd also give advice if he felt that it was the right decision. Because I think maybe earlier on he talked about your singing style being softer.
Yes.
Is that right?
Oh, that story. Yes, absolutely. No, well, that was the thing being that in those days, you'd arrive and there would be an orchestra, full orchestra. I mean, 30 people or something. And you go into a box, a booth, and off we go, and John would be out there sort of doing all this or in the control room. And we had been playing at Tina's and other places, sort of coffee bars and restaurants and things. And I had a look at a picture from those days. It was actually a folk sort of concert that was recorded, and then my old friend Gary Mankiewicz took some pictures, which are now well known. And there are no mics. No, because we're all, it's a mighty wind, it's Kingston Trio.
No hand on the ear.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it's like it's all. So there we were. I loved you all the summer through, all this. And John comes down from the control room. He said, guys, you sound like a load of football players. Can you just sort of take it down a bit, take it down a bit? And that's when we started to learn microphone technique. And that's when we started the soft sound that we had. And the extraordinary thing about Chad, and it's come up now with the new Lost album, as we call it, When All Is Said and Done, is that there are moments, and I would say to Joe, am I in there? And he'd say, yes. And I said, dial up the track. And there I am, because I now can't tell whether it's Chad or I. Because we had our technique then, which evolved, a lot of it had to do with, it was like double tracking. We would sing in unison, and then when you break into harmony, it's sort of, woo, wow, a big surprise, nice. And so we had this extraordinary blend. It's what Johnny Carson said when we, on the Tonight Show, we did the Tonight Show, and we finished our song, and he said, "What a blend," is what he said.
You've done quite a lot of dates with Peter Asher,
Yeah.
and you guys as duo work really well. But is it right that Peter and Gordon took over the residency at Tina's Bar from you guys? Is
Yes,
that
that's right.
accurate?
That's right. Yeah, because John had signed us, and hey, we're going off. We're going to be pop stars. Hey, amazing. Well, goodbye, everybody. And they said, "Oh, no, 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 hang on a minute." That was going really well because there'd been quite a buzz, you know. Some young women came down and admired us a lot, you know, and all that kind of thing. Very nice. And do you know anybody who's doing the same sort of thing? I said, "Yeah." I said, "My mate Peter Asher. He's over there with his pal Gordon at the Pickwick Club, because we all sort of, it was all, London was a small place then for those of us who were picking up guitars and things. And I'll ask them, do they want this lunchtime gig as you take over? And they did. And then within a very short space of time, couple of months or something, they'd been signed, and then we're all in the charts in America. Nobody can work out which was which. It was kind of amazing. But yes, we all knew each other and everything. And obviously, when Gordon died and then and Chad came ill first, so he sort of retired and then left us in 2020, I think. And it became an obvious thing. And as Peter's rather, how can I put this, rather tasteless joke is, but I mean, it's okay. It's done with love, is that the right guys died because because I, Gordon and I we did the lower lead parts.
Aye.
Chad and Peter did the high harmonies. And so had it gone the other anyway, there we are. It's a good gag and one that just amuses us all and would amuse Peter or Gordon. I mean, yeah, Gordon or Chad had they been here. So with love and respect. But yeah, the right guys died. So we've been, yeah. The thing is, Peter and I were going great guns actually before COVID, and then COVID struck. That took 2 years out of that, and then Peter had some health problems and everything, and is getting better now, which is great. And he fell and hurt his it was a leg break thing, and poor chap. So he's still a little bit on a stick when he's off stage. But we were trying out to see whether it was still working, and it's pretty good. I mean, it's we put our toe in the water again, and I'm hoping to do some more.
It just seems a wonderful combination.
Yeah.
Obviously you're able to dip into each other's back catalogue, and
Mhm.
it works really well.
Yeah, twice the hits, twice the stories. Some of which involve, I mean, there's a moment I do a story, for example. Twice it's happened to me. Okay, I'll do the story quickly. Twice it's happened to me. One occasion was when Peter called me, 68, something in there, 68, 69, I think, and said, "You've got to get over here. And listen, I've discovered this guy, this singer-songwriter. He's really great. Come on over, we'll have something to eat, and then we'll get him to sing some songs, and you'll see, you'll see." Okay. So I go, well, we have something to eat. Oh, hi, this is James. Oh, hi, James. And James is got long, dark hair. He's very rather shy. So Peter and I do all the talking. And then after dinner, "Hey, come on, James, sing some songs." And James Taylor sits there looking for my approval on and I'm going, unbelievably good. Peter, this guy is fantastic. I went, okay. So there's another occasion. You'd think that would be one that I've heard a musical giant sitting on a sofa before they're famous, going, "I hope you like this. The other occasion was in 66. I'm in London, Chad's in California, and Columbia Records, to whom we're now signed, are having a convention. Would you please come? Interesting people there. Bob Dylan's going to be there. Oh, great. Okay. So go along. And an A&R man from Columbia comes up and says, "I think you're looking for material for your new album." Yes, yes. Well, you might be interested. There's a guy on our label. You won't have heard of him, of course. His name's Paul Simon. And I'll put you two together. I said, "Yeah, great." So Paul comes over to my place, sits on the sofa, sings one brilliant song after another. I say, "My God, you're fantastic. Call Chad." And he gives us one of his brilliant songs. And and he's in Paul's in the studio, sort of making tea and giving advice. And when he's in the studio, actually there, he gets a call from a guy called Tom Wilson, who is an A&R man for Columbia, who's added a sort of ambient drum track to a little folky thing called Sounds of Silence. And hey, I'm going up the charts. See you in the charts, Paul, right? And now we have this song. And what do Columbia put out? They put out a sort of ridiculous novelty number of mine called Ballad of a Teenage Failure, which entirely lived up to its name and stiffed. And there we are. So that's the story. And then I go into Homeward Bound, which was the song. I do this in the show with Peter, and it's but twice I've seen this has happened to me. Amazing.
Where did you get Yesterday's Gone from?
Chad wrote it.
Oh, right. So straight away out of the bat.
Straight away.
Wow.
Yeah, without that, nothing, I mean, it's just extraordinary. And it was starting to go up the country charts, apparently. And then they realized, oh, hey, these guys are English and everything. And they, hey, oh my God, well, in that case, boom. And immediately we were into the pop charts. But there's a story I tell on stage, which in the recent show, which is one of the last shows, I think may even have been the last show that Chad and I did. And Chad was not well, but we got through it. And we're signing things. It's in LA. And we're signing things afterwards. Thank you very much, signing records. And I look up, there's a long line, and I look up, and there's a guy with a baseball cap pulled right down. And I thought, that looks like Billy Bob Thornton.
Mm.
And I am signing, he comes closer. And this is Billy Bob Thornton. Right, and he comes up, says, hi, I'm Billy. I said, yes, you are. And he hands me, says, here, I'd like you to have this. And he hands me a CD of his band, the Boxmasters, and their version of Yesterday's Gone. And they changed the lyric at one point. There's miles and miles of golden sand becomes miles and miles of Texas sand. Because it has a country flavor to it, you see? So there you are. No, without Yesterday's Gone, nothing else would have happened. Extraordinary. And so I owe him anyway, but I mean, for that alone, yeah.
So Chad, he also wrote a summer song.
He co-wrote a summer song. There were two guys, their surnames are Metcalf and Noble, and I can't remember their first names. They were, at that time, they were on the folk circuit, and they were working with Tom Springfield, because Dusty at that time was part of the Springfields, which was a double act with her brother, Tom. And Metcalf and Noble were friends of Tom Springfield in some way, shape, or form. And they had written Trees Swaying in the Summer Breeze, all that. And they couldn't finish it. And Chad came in and wrote the bridge. They say that all good things must end someday, all that. Which Peter, quite correctly, the great producer, points out. He says, that makes the song. And indeed it does. So that's the story. So he co-wrote the summer song.
In terms of your writing, did that take an extra couple of years to come in? Because I know
yes.
that.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I was learning at Chad's feet, so to speak. So I could play and I could sing a lot, and I could play some folky chords, quite a lot of folky chords. But Chad came in and said, here, put your finger like that. That's an added ninth. What, is it? Wow, damn. And then I was watching sort of what was going on, and I started to write. So I learned, and then he and I started to write together on the back of the bus, because there's nothing else to do. And you're going across America, all kinds of songs that we started out, and then I took off on my own. And then he rather stopped writing. And it's extraordinary because by the time you get to the second to last album for Columbia, it just says songs by Jeremy Clyde. So it's all changed.
I was just going to say, because one of those relatively early songs of yours, Should I, was covered by a young Benny Anderson of ABBA.
Was it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, his band, the Hep Stars. You must know that, surely.
I don't, no.
Oh,
I didn't know that. Up until now, I'd never heard that. So thank you. Thank you for that information. I didn't know that. How
oh wow,
extraordinary.
okay. Yeah, that's a fully verified information. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's extraordinary. We have had an influence, Chad and I, which I would never have thought we had. I mean, I'm amazed. People come up and say, without you, I wouldn't have, and stuff like that. And it is quite extraordinary. And I mean, I've had another whole career as an actor in England. But people don't come up to me and say, without that, I wouldn't have. So the power of music, the power of popular music is just extraordinary. And I do think because I write songs and I have a big thing about songs. I think the song is an extraordinary thing. It's not poetry. It's not a piece of music. It is this extraordinary thing, and people respond to it. And I don't know. I mean, I think it's just the most wonderful art form. The 3 minute song. I'm devoted to it.
My favourite period is the of Cabbages and Kings and the Ark
Yeah,
material. It is interesting as a an Englishman that much of that material is a companion piece to the likes of Sergeant Pepper, but is less known than in the
yeah,
States because you had increasing success over there
yeah.
and less so in the UK.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's nobody really knows. I mean, the reason I never play the UK, for example, even with Peter, because Peter had continuing success in England, the British Isles, and we didn't. So, I mean, it's this weird thing, and it's less so now because I'm not on telly anymore as an actor so much because of age and things. There aren't the parts actually. But it's extraordinary. There was a whole period, certainly, where in America, I am Anne Jeremy. And in England, oh, I just saw you on the telly being a villain yet again. Because I played a lot of villains. I don't know why. Staring blue eyes, I think that does it.
But your material in that late 60s era is very much of its time. The
Yes,
Pipe Dream
yes,
editorial and the Progress Suite, the emancipation of Mr. X, these are all touching on themes of
yes.
humanity getting together and peace and love.
Absolutely. I mean, it was, we were very influenced, obviously, by everything that was going on. Do you remember the guy? Nobody knows now. There's a chap called Herman Kahn, I think his name was. Kahn. And he was a man he was a professor. And it was his job to work out how many millions of people would survive a nuclear holocaust and to work out what the advantage might be. I mean, this is full on Doctor Strangelove. It's where Kubrick got Strangelove from. And in this mad world, so you've got the sort of love and peace reaction, you've got the beginnings of human rights and animal rights and gay rights and all that stuff, sort of consciousness stuff. And then you've got these complete madmen running around, working out whether, anybody would survive and hoping they wouldn't be communist. I mean, it's just bonkers. And of course, the period was, particularly in California, I think, which is where I was, it was particularly sort of its time. And I look back on it, I look at it as a high point. There was hope for a second. I mean, mad hope. I mean, it was all nonsense, but there was hope. And I found that it may have been naive, but boy, I liked it.
Was this the Laurel Canyon scene with the likes of the
Well, there were
Association, the
elements of
Monkeys?
that. Yeah, the Laurel Canyon scene is a little tiny bit later. I've kind of left California by then, but I knew some of the people. I didn't live in Laurel Canyon. I knew some of the people, but they were kind of, you see, the problem was that Chad and I began to sniff the wind and very quickly worked out that being a sort of British invasion mop top type person was passé. And what was going on in America, particularly in San Francisco, obviously, and of course in the canyon, was much more interesting. And meanwhile, we were working with, by that time, producers, Gary Usher and people who were connected with very much the sort of Beach Boys stuff and others who I can't remember the names. You probably would know.
The Millennium.
There you go. Thank you. The Millennium. And Chad was interested in harmony, had sort of become, he as an arranger. He suddenly was not interested in being a pop singer. He was much more interested in being an arranger. So I just sort of, okay, you write the songs, I'll arrange them. Fine.
Is that Paxton Quigley, the kind of an example?
Story about Paxton Quigley. Yes, it would be an example. Absolutely. I mean, of its time, no kidding. Three in the Attic. Paxton Quigley, the story is I'm in London, it's often happened, and Chad was in California. And he rings me up and he's been saying, I should be scoring movies. I should be like John Barry. And I'm saying, yes, you should, actually. Actually, yeah, you could do that. You'd be great. And he calls me and he says, hey, I've got a movie. I'm scoring a movie. I said, brilliant. He said, we need a title song. I said, great, okay. What's the title of the script? He said, Paxton Quigley's Had the Course. I said, you mean you want me to write a song called Paxton Quigley's Had the Course? He said, yes. Okay. I said, tell me about what's the plot of this thing? Who is Paxton and what's going on? And the answer is Paxton Quigley is a young dude in college and he's working his way through all the girls and they start talking to each other and they come up with this very 1960s plot, which is they're going to kidnap him, put him in the attic and pleasure him until he sees the error of his ways. Okay. So I sit down and write, Paxton Quigley's had the course and feeling kind of low down, feeling kind of slow down. By the life that he leads and all this. So it's all about, how because he's fallen in love with one of the girls. Finally. So we wrote the song. And then Chad, I took it to California. And Chad and I wrote, I think quite largely Chad, a whole middle section. That's all very well, but not with my daughter, you don't. Very Chadwick. But pretty good. And off we've done it. We record it. That's it. It's going to be. And then they changed the title of the film to Three in the Attic. And nobody knows who Paxton Quigley is, or what the course was, or what he had indeed, which was a good time. So that was the end of that. And what is so wonderful is that now Quentin Tarantino does Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the film I absolutely love. And he obviously was mad about Three in the Attic. And so if you watch the film, you'll see Three in the Attic comes on a lot. It's on sort of billboards and things. And there we are. The radio goes on and there's Paxton Quigley. Somebody plays a little bit of Paxton Quigley. So Paxton Quigley finally came right, which was a sort of wonderful circle because nobody knew anything about it. It was completely, it ended up on the ark, but nobody knew what it was all about. That's the story.
In terms of yourself, was the 1970s predominantly acting generally? Is that how you preoccupied your time?
Well, yes. I mean, Chad, we agreed that our time was coming to it. And nobody thought pop music was going to last. You got 3 or 4 years out of it, tops. We were already in year 3. We're looking at year 4. Actually, no, we're in 4 years now. 63, 69. I don't know, it's fine. So we kind of go, something, and we're not having so much fun. And the records aren't selling. That's the other point, is Columbia couldn't wait to get rid of us. So the whole thing is sort of stopping. And I'm looking at becoming 30, which is, a change of gear, time to settle down. And people are telling me what a good actor I am because I've been on Batman playing myself. And I go, oh my God, I've done Shakespeare and stuff. I don't need this. And so I went back and got unbelievably, I walked into a 6-part BBC series, a lovely part, and then into a huge hit play above the title and all that. Ran for a year in London, then transferred to Broadway and so on and so on. And so I was off to the races, and it was kind of extraordinary. I didn't have to try almost. It was amazing. It was just a question of timing, I guess, like so much. Anyway, so I just picked up where I left off. And the point is, because I looked younger than I was, at 30, I could play 20, which meant that I hadn't lost out on that bit of your career, which is the rather important bit, which is the juvenile bit, when you get the girl or whatever, be the hero, the young person. And so I was able to ride that for many years and establish a career, which was extraordinary. But I missed California. I missed the music. I went over, in fact, between the run of the play, Conduct Unbecoming, and its Broadway run, there was a holiday. We all said, I did holidays. I didn't do holidays. I did work. It didn't occur to me. Other people did holidays. I just sort of kept on going. And I went to stay. I couldn't think what to do with it. And so I rang Chad and went and stayed with Chad and his family because they were my best friends. And I could hang out and be in the pool. And I wrote up some rather interesting stuff at that point because it was a sudden moment of, oh, I'm back making music again, which was lovely because I missed it.
There's some lovely material from the mid 1970s on that All Good Things box set, which I don't know if they saw release anywhere else, but they're just wonderful. Like Carmen Miranda. Is that one of yours or is that Chad's?
That's mine.
Ah.
That's mine. Actually, the lyrics are by a great old friend of mine, my oldest friend, because we were kind of brought up together, this guy called Hugo Williams, who went on to be a poet. And when I say a poet, I mean Queen's Gold Medal for Poetry, T.S. Eliot Prize poet type person. In the world of poetry, if you say Hugo, they know who he's big. And I was running out of ideas. It was this all, what do you write about? Another morning, fried eggs. What are you going to write about? Honestly, and it's a big question. And I'm not a great one for confessional songwriting. Very much Taylor Swift, I'll pour my feelings out and you will know that he let me down or now I'm happy or whatever. I mean, it's fine, it's great. And John Lennon, of course, was a master of that. He would write about real life. I didn't feel an urge to do that much. So I went around to see Hugo and I said, you're a poet, got any words? And that's where it comes from. And there is a Chad and Jeremy version on the new album with a completely slightly different arrangement, and that with lots of harmonies and stuff, and Chad playing Up a Storm. And yeah, look forward to that. You are dealing with, and when you talk about when all is said, what was the title?
All Good Things.
All Good Things. You are somebody who has been digging deep into the catalogue. I mean, most people don't know this, what you're talking about. But yes, there is absolutely, because anything that I met this other guy, David Pierce, who was the lyricist for a band called Meal Ticket, which involved a very great old friend of mine called Rick Jones. I met him at a party given by Annie Ross, the jazz singer. And he was a very tall guy, enormously tall, sort of 6'6", 6'7". He was wearing a cowboy hat. And I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm a lyricist. And I said, I've always wanted to meet a lyricist because poets and lyricists are different. And, yes, Hugo and I could, but he's in the world of poetry, which doesn't have the constrictions or the freedom, if you like, of writing for music. And he and I took off. And so anything that was written before Chad became ill, that we were able to get out. But I wrote with Dave for 35 years. And so that stuff is all in the Bottom Drawer sessions, including some of the lyrics which I set posthumously. But there's quite a lot of material that was around which Chad became familiar with. And so there's quite a lot of Chad and Jeremy versions of Bottom Drawer.
Can I ask you about what I think is one of the few exceptions to that? You mentioned Rick Jones earlier, also part of Meal Ticket, and that's Zanzibar Sunset. So that was one of the few songs that you wrote with Rick as opposed to David.
I didn't know that. No. What happened is Dave wrote enormous amounts. I mean, he wrote all kinds of books, which are available still, I believe, how to deal with Penguin and Scribner, sort of funny detective stories. But he would write every day compulsively. If you were staying with him, you'd get up in the morning and you'd hear the tap of the typewriter going. And of course, he couldn't remember what he'd written. And he worked with Rick, his great buddy, they were sort of splitting up's not the word, but their lives were going in different directions. When I met Big Dave, but yeah, he had forgotten. I played Zanzibar Sunset to Rick, and he said, I wrote that. Well, they co-wrote it. So then I changed it because I knew Rick had a better memory than Dave would put out books of poetry, sort of privately printed. And there were a couple of things that Rick had written that ended up in there. She had nothing to do with. So they were. He didn't mean to. It wasn't deliberate. But yes, but we all knew each other and were friends. And I'd known Rick from another part of his life because he'd been an actor. The London scene, you know.
Because there was a few years in the 80s where you were active as Chad and Jeremy, but it was scuppered by quite a strange record label that you were signed to.
Yes, well, we've never had a great experience with record labels, Chad and I. It's always been a problem. Yes, Rockshire Records, a short-lived venture. Later, we found out that it had been financed by money that was Hughes Aircraft. It was financed illegally. Part of Rockshire was doing the medical insurance program for Hughes Aircraft and was siphoning it off. And then, of course, lawsuits. Of course, I mean, So yes, that is, we had a brief and amusing time with Rockshire Records.
Was it about 25 years ago where you were generally starting to get more active again with Chad in terms of Chad and Jeremy live
Yes.
dates? And
Yes, into the 90s, I think. We both wanted to. There's also a part of it was, first of all, I had all this material. I hadn't stopped. I was still writing, and I hadn't stopped writing, and I had all this material, and I would run this stuff by Chad and say, what do you think? And he said, wow, this is fantastic. So we wanted to work together. And also, to be fair, my career had been going very well, but I wasn't perhaps working quite as much as I had been because you're not the juvenile lead and you're not probably going to get the girl and all this. It's everybody's career as an actor, unless you're very, very lucky. So I was around a bit more. And also we both wanted, so we then started touring again, which we loved and had fun doing. There was a moment where we were terminally unfashionable, and then we started to become a little more fashionable. And that was that turn. Oh, yeah, those guys. Oh, my God. Yes, I remember that. The synthesizer madness had sort of slightly, they'd all stopped standing there behind their synthesizers with big hair, And because we were folky, guitar-y people.
You were never
and that
flock of
was
seagulls.
Exactly. There you are. There you are. I can name all kinds. But I mean, listen, it's
Yeah,
a
no
style of
shade.
music. And now, of course, everything is everything. I mean, it's now people use it, people today, they use references from that era and everyone goes, oh, or samples, God knows. So the world turns.
You've teased us repeatedly about the bottom drawer sessions, and I think when I spoke to you a decade ago, you'd released volume 2 and was about to release volume 3. So there's so much material to cover. I don't know if I can randomly try some tracks on you and see if you can, because there's a lot
Sure.
of. Is there any more left of the wine?
Yes. What about it? It's a favorite song.
That goes back a while, isn't it? It's like
They
this
all
was
go. No, no, there's
this,
no the point.
but
Okay,
when I
okay.
mean back a while, was that the early 80s, way back with David? Is that right?
Yes, that is right. And the reason I know immediately, can sort of look into my mind's eye and know roughly when it was Dave had a massive stroke in the late 1990s, sort of just beginning of the millennium, sort of in there. And I thought it was all over. I went to see him in Paris and it was awful. And I thought, that's it, we've written our last songs. The reason I know it's before that is because in my mind's eye, I can see his typewriter version. So I know that when I look through the songbook, so to speak, the copies of the pages, if it's in my handwriting or my notes. It's after the stroke. If it's written before, if it's on a typewriter or indeed an early word processor, then I know which period it's in. Yes, it's an early one. The thing being, and actually later, to my amazement, because he and I had written so consistently together, he would send me sort of chaotic notes, and I would know where he was going. And then we discovered Skype, and everything changed because that meant I could sit and say, look, okay, you wrote this and it goes like this, da 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 da. Now we need the next section, the bridge. Oh, that isn't the bridge. No, it isn't the bridge. That's the verse. Now I need a bridge. I need some words. You might want to go in this direction, da da da. And we started to work together, and we actually wrote some of our best stuff. There is no relation between Bottom Drawer Sessions #1, actually, is mostly later stuff written after the stroke, curiously. But there are stuff from 35 years all over that. There's no, it's not, there's no beginning and end. The whole point was, I knew I had a lot of material. I thought it was going to be about 7 albums worth, and it turned out to be 9 because I kept discovering stuff or maybe setting stuff posthumously, but not that many, maybe 3 or 4 songs. And the reason I did it, and it was sort of, so that the songs would exist. Because otherwise they're just, I wasn't recording them with Chad because I couldn't, except I could, because when I say that, I say I couldn't. Of course I could. And it's called When All Is Said and Done. And there you are. So there are versions. But in order to make sure that the songs existed and weren't just sort of moldering cassettes and a few notes, that's why I've done the whole thing. And it ended up to be 9 albums. Hit me with another song and I can tell you roughly from what period. Maybe I
I
can't.
think Impromptu is from volume 9, I think.
Impromptu, yes, that is a later song. That's one of those after his stroke jobs. But to be fair, I am filling in quite a few gaps and doing much more work than I did before. Before, he would just present me. Sometimes I would just look at the lyric and set it straight off the page without having to change a note or a word. It was extraordinary. But Impromptu is a later one, yes. I
It's
rather
Small
like that.
Talk.
Small Talk.
Yeah.
Small Talk is an earlier one. There is a sort of difference. He was very clever with words, and he could sometimes rather overwrite and be clever, which is fine. But after the stroke, curiously, the amount of verbiage calmed down. But sometimes it was actually better because there was less, I'm playing such clever word games with internal rhymes and all that. And it was much more feeling. He had an extraordinary range because lots of jokes, but then he could write something like For a While There, which has become a huge favorite in our gang. It's the most people weep and hold hands and things like that.
You may have done this with Chad. Rien ne va plus.
Rien ne va plus, yes. Dave was Canadian, lived in Paris eventually, loved Paris. And Rien ne va plus is what they say in casinos in France. And it's literally nothing goes anymore. It's before the croupier spins the wheel. That's it. I don't know what they say in Vegas, but that's your lot. I don't know. And stop it. No idea. But it's that moment, right? And now you've put your money on black and it's going to come up red, inevitably. So yeah, so Rien ne va plus, that's quite an early one, I think. And
Yeah.
there's a version of that, a Chad and Jeremy version of that on When All Is Said and Done, because it was one of the early ones. So we managed to get him under the wire.
You mentioned on When All Is Said and Done that Chad had done some cover versions, but you've relatively recently done your own dedicated covers album, Classics.
Yes, I thought to myself, everybody at the end of their career does a sort of covers album. It seems to be a thing. And I thought, well, why can't I? And it was really after having worked for 9 years with Jo Meacham. And he and I had a style. We'd got a sort of We had our style, which was the way he played, the way I sang, the way I played. We would sort of, it fitted. And I thought, well, I'll look around for some songs that I like and we'll do them in the style we've got used to because we're finishing each other's sentences at this point. It's been a real collaboration, and that's what we did. It's been extraordinary. I've really enjoyed it, and it surprised me because it ended up sort of as an autobiography. There's elements from my childhood, Teddy Bear's Picnic, for example, which we have another look at, which may not be known in America, and Jerusalem, which is sort of choir boy stuff. But always try and ring the changes with them. So give them a version that nobody's ever heard before. And I really like it. I'm pleased we did it. And I've done my 10 albums, and now finally, ta-da, when all is said and done.
For No One has got a bit of a connection with Peter Asher, given that it's said that Paul McCartney, it's about his relationship with Jane.
Yes.
I assume that's
Yes.
just incidental. It's just that you love Paul's song.
It was a song that I thought I could do a different version of and highlight just how tough those lyrics are, how deeply felt, how not mop top they are. And of course, I know Jane and had met Paul from time to time. And so, yes, but if I could do something that was completely different with a song, then I'd have a go at it because I didn't want to just knock out another version. I wanted to make it like, oh, I hadn't heard it that way before, you know? And it's a much sadder song than perhaps people have realized.
One last one from that album, Leslie Duncan's Love Song. And I'm fond of David Bowie. I don't know if it was released, but when he was in his sort of 60s hippie phase, did a beautiful version on acoustic.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Wonderful
No,
song.
I mean, it's very strange because it's off a Tumbleweed Connection, I think. And it's completely different. It's so not a Taupin, Elton John thing. And it's very harmonic. And I set out thinking, well, maybe I'll try some harmonies. But as always, I sort of reel backwards and say, do you know something? I don't think so because Chad would do it, but I will do it this way.
The Kickstarter ends on Friday, the 25th of September. So everyone needs to pledge by then.
Good. Yes, absolutely. Keep on going because the project will get bigger and better if you do. And thank you so much. The response has been extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. And we're all very, very overexcited and making extra plans. So there you are. And of course, there are levels of pledge, apparently. This has nothing to do with me. I'm not organizing this. But so we are all contributing things that have been sitting in drawers that belong to us, or Chad and I, and the special things. Thanks, Jason.
Bye-bye.
Well done, mate. Bye.
Bye.